right, guys, welcome back. This is Of Stone and Clay, episode 80. We are here with Jake Hansen, our dearest brother. Thanks for coming, man.
Dude, I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah.
We had, darn it, we talked about some good stuff before we started rolling, but
We can talk about it again. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
no, you're good. So Jake is a musician and a member of The King Will Come. We've had a lot of them on the show already. And one thing I was really disturbed that I recently found out is you don't have any music on Spotify.
Not yet.
And I'm pretty disturbed by it because you're so talented. There's butter in your throat at all times. And yeah, why don't we have your gifts readily available?
That's such a big question. There's just so much, and I'm like, how do I give you the not too long of an answer? I think ultimately it comes down to just like timing, and it just hasn't been right.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to put out like a full album, like to start?
I tried actually a couple years ago and was working with like a small indie label, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so that was, I don't know how personal your writing is to you, but like it's deeply personal, every song that I write. And so to have a project like that, like 13 songs that feel like it's like your journal and it's like kind of the deepest parts of your heart, to give that so freely and then have it in a lot of ways feel kind of like steamrolled over.
Yeah.
Was kind of like emotionally traumatizing. And that's such a big word, traumatizing, but it affected me really deeply.
Yeah.
So I was fearful for a little while to like work on stuff again.
Yeah. To put yourself out there.
To find the right person, I think, to work with, because I don't produce.
Yeah.
So now I'm like working on it.
Okay.
So this year,
have you kind of scrapped that album?
That album, yes. Like those recordings, yes. Not those songs.
Okay.
Like those songs are still super important and true, and like have taken on new meaning. So.
And you've probably grown as an artist, so you can probably re-record them a lot better.
I hope, yeah. My voice is different for sure. When I listen back, crazy that you started here, because I went into Dropbox the other day to send a friend a file. And I found all of the old like demos and the charts and like some of the mixes for those songs. And it's only been like 3-ish years.
Yeah.
But I was like, whoa, my voice, thankfully now I feel like is so much better and like more developed and agile and strong and healthy, that I'm excited. And I feel like I'm more just like true to what my voice actually is. I think then in some ways I imitated some of the artists that I loved and vocalists that I loved. And I feel like I do that less now. I'm just like, this is my voice. And I know how the songs that I write fit within what my voice is.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to re-record those in the future.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm getting all the listeners excited, and they haven't heard anything from you, but yeah, you have a few songs that you're kind of the main. I feel like you're the main vocalist in King Will Come, right?
I don't think so.
It just depends on.
No, there is a song that Garen and I sing together that we wrote together, "Find Me," and I love that song. So I do kind of have like a solo thing on that.
Yeah.
But I think that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's complicated. You're in a band that has like 19 members or
yeah,
something.
It's the best.
It's so cool. Yeah, I've talked about this before, but yeah, I'm just kind of this lucky groupie bystander that is friends with a lot of people in the band, and it's been so fun just to be a part of, because I'm not musical in really any capacity, but it's been fun to like you guys do these semi-annual retreats, and I went and just kind of hung with you guys last time, and
so glad you did.
It was so cool because they asked me to share some of my writing. Like, you guys are all going up and sharing your like individual songs, because most of you guys are also solo artists, and and they were like, yeah, well, church, why don't you share some of your writing? I was like, I'm down, but I don't know. That's so generous,
Well, I feel like you, I don't feel like you're like what did you say? Did you say groupie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like you're just part of the family. And that's why I was like happy that you came to the cabin. Also just cause like the content night that was a couple months ago at the Alpine House.
Yeah.
It was like so great to have you there, and it's always great having you around. So also to get to hear, I think, or get to witness like what people are creating is inspiring. And like, we just want to do that with everybody, at least like I do. And I feel like that's fairly true for The King Will Come. Like outside of the songs that we work on as a group, a lot of us are writing together or like witnessing and supporting each other, and friends that are just like super close to the band, that it's like, it's fun to see what people are creating, whether that's on their own or on their journey with God, or straight up like creating with God in mind. It's just, I feel like the creator or the creativity that's within us is evidence of the creator in us. And so it's a beautiful thing to witness when you get to watch anybody in their creative element. So like getting to hear you read some of the stuff that you've written, and then also like Naps, like when he played what he had composed, I didn't know that he even did that. So it's like to get to hear that when normally I get to hear him play bass, which is amazing, but to hear that as well and witness all form of creation from all of my friends. Like, why shouldn't we do that more?
It's so cool. I was hanging last night with my roommate Spencer and our buddy Ricky, who he makes like EDM music, and we were just talking about creativity, and we were talking about how like creativity within dating, like how much when you're dating somebody, how interested they are in your creativity, how much that has to do with like how much you like them, or like how important that is for each of us, like for the person you're dating to love your work. And it's funny, he said something so funny. He's like, yeah, if somebody can't show me something they've created and put their whole heart into, like, I don't know what they can do for me.
Whoa.
And I mean, it's a bit drastic of a take, but what are your thoughts on like if you're starting a romantic relationship, even super early stages, like how important is it that person not only appreciates your art, but like loves your art?
I have a lot of thoughts, and some of them are conflicting. So that's where that pause came from. I feel like, I don't know, I want to understand what I even think about this. I wanted to say like, ultimately it's okay if they don't love what I create. Well, a lot of thoughts here. So I think in my relationship with God, I think it can be easy to be distracted by the things he's created and love the creation more than I love the creator.
Yeah.
And I think in our art and what we create, as much as it is like comes from who I am, at least when I create, and I see that in my friends, that it's like a result of what they're experiencing and like who they are. So I would hope that my friends, in any relationship, but especially romantic, I would hope that they appreciate it and love me enough to see me in that, and love the me that's in that art as well. Even if it's not like for me with music, even if it's not like the type of music they normally listen to,
they like,
can they appreciate the lyrics or even just one line? And I find the same thing. I don't know. That's I think all I have to say on that. What about you?
It's tough. I think it's funny. I think when I was younger, I was more open-minded with this specific thing, because I was like, yeah, like it might not be their cup of tea, but yeah, they can appreciate it. But I've just realized in relationships I've had, like, if they don't, like, and it's tougher with me. Like, we talked about this before the show starts. Like, for me, you gotta you gotta fully read multiple books, right? You're not just, hey, listen to this song real quick,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's a bit of a task, but for me, it shows, like, are you willing to, like, consume this little parcel of my soul? And whether you are obsessed with it or not, maybe isn't as important, but I think I would have a hard time if they're like, yeah, it was good. It's not really for me. I'd be like, well, then maybe I'm not for you. Like, this is like an outward expression of who I am. Like, so, but I think you're right. There's like, you don't want your person to adore your work more than they adore you.
Yeah.
You know? And I think maybe if you're like a really high level celebrity, that's something they probably worry about, you know?
Yeah.
Are you more obsessed with my body of work than me as a human? But to us, you know, lowly aspiring celebrities over here, you know, that's a non-issue for the most part. But yeah, I don't know. Me and my buddies were just kind of debating this last night, and my buddy that does EDM, he's like, I can't expect a girl to like EDM. Like, hopefully she does, but I can't expect that. And my retort was kind of like, well, that's fine in the initial stages, but I would hope if she loved you, she would love your music. Even if she's like, yeah, I don't normally listen to EDM, but I love you so much. I'm going to open my heart up and, like, not make myself love it, but be so open-minded that it's just, I don't know, it becomes a byproduct. But I don't know if that's too lofty of an ideal.
I don't think it is. When what you were saying was reminding me of, you know, like when you were talking about, especially in the context of maybe celebrity and that worry of people liking their work and not really knowing them or loving them the way that they love their work. This is not a common experience. I think because I am not like famous, I don't have any music out, like, but I have been in the situation where like I'm meeting people and they're like very uninterested in me until they find out that I like do music, or somebody that they know and they are a fan of does music is like, oh, like Jake's a great singer-songwriter. Then they're like all of a sudden interested.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
I don't want you to like me because of what I do, or like all of a sudden change your mind because I do something that you're interested in.
Yeah.
But I think on the flip side of that is I have friends who I wasn't a big fan of their music and I had heard their music before. And then like, as I've grown in my love for them, I have almost new insight into their music. Well, I definitely do have new insight into their music because I'm more aware of who they are and how that relates to them. And I've become such a huge fan, like of some of my friends that I wouldn't have listened to before. Right. And now I'm like, there's some in the top of my like Spotify Wrapped, you know? So that's an interesting thing. And it's not because I'm just supporting a friend, which I love to do. I love supporting the people I love in like their creativity and just in general. And, but it's kind of bizarre how much loving somebody can make you love what they've created. So I do think actually if somebody really does love you, that there will be a love for what you create as a natural result. So yeah.
And I was telling my buddies, I was like, I can compare like the last 2 girls I dated and how they reacted to my art. And it was just kind of night and day, you know, and one felt amazing and felt like soul expanding, and the other, it bordered on apathy, you know?
Whoa.
And that was just, you know, that was maybe more her personality. She was like, it's, you know, but the other one, like, she found out I was a writer and like read my first book the next day and then like called me and wanted to talk about it. And I was like, that's what I need.
That's
You
cool.
know, and it doesn't need to be in a 24-hour period, but
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I think when you love somebody, you love everything about them, you know.
For sure.
What would you classify your genre as?
Whoa. Being really honest, like for a long time, I've hated this question.
Yeah.
But I think because the reason I've hated it is because I've never felt like I had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I don't know how to answer this. So it's like, not that I hate the question, but I've always not loved being asked that in the past.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of exciting to just be like, I just love good music.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely love like singer-songwriter, pop, jazz,
Mm-hmm.
R&B, and some folk stuff. And like, I feel like I'm very informed by everything I listen to, and I really listen to everything.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't really listen to is like heavy metal.
Yeah.
I've listened to it. I just don't love it.
Right.
I think maybe because I'm such a lyrics person,
Right.
and I also like the clarity and separation, like being able to pick out different parts and listen to details. And I find that a little too difficult in that genre.
Right.
But
So you don't love Slipknot?
yeah, I don't know who Slipknot is. But yeah, I would say genuinely, I would probably fall under like the pop category on streaming platforms, but a little bit more on the singer-songwritery side of things. And I think that's just because I'm influenced by so much that it's not like hyper pop or even just, you know, what most people think about when they think about pop.
Yeah.
But I think that's also changing because now songs that are hitting the pop charts would not have typically, or in the past, or don't fall into pop genre. But I think pop music means what's popular.
Right.
So it's like what people are listening to.
Yeah.
So I think in a lot of ways that's changing. And I think a really, really like current and recent example of that is Beyonce doing like what she's calling a country album.
Right.
And there's some great music on that album.
Yeah.
That of the songs I've heard, I'm like, this is great, you know? And I'm not the biggest Beyonce fan, but I'm like, this is beautiful.
Yeah, good music is good music.
And so I'm like really happy that that's on the pop charts. And then same thing with some country artists that my brother, like who only listens to country, when I see those songs hit like pop charts, I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. What's your songwriting process like? Is it typically one way, or do you approach it in many ways depending on what you're going through and your mood?
I do have kind of like an MO where I tend to write, mostly when I write, it kind of falls into this pattern, which is I have like mild synesthesia. And so when I'm feeling a certain way, I associate that pretty strongly with like a color and a certain key.
Will you explain to people what synesthesia is?
Yeah. So my understanding of it, at least, is that like what you hear, like notes are, for some people, it's correlated to certain numbers or shapes. For me, it's more color, and also like my emotions tend to really feel like
connected
to color and key or sound.
Yeah. So it's kind of like your senses. It's kind of like, I don't know, an extra sense that's correlated with another sense.
I don't know that I would call it an extra sense, but I feel like it's this crossover where senses kind of meet and they like play off of and affect each other. So like what I hear is connected to what I feel and connected to what I see.
Yeah.
Or for some people, what they taste.
So if you listen to any song, a specific color you'll feel.
Not necessarily one color, because like for me, so C sounds yellow, D sounds like a little bit more orange. As we get to like G, A, it feels really blue and green.
Oh, really?
And some people actually for a lot of people, yellow is closer to like B and A. And then as you get closer to like C, D, you're actually getting more towards green, and then F, G is going to feel, anyway, it's different for everybody. But for me, it's like C is very yellow. like D is really orange. By the time I get to G, A, it's like a dark blue. A is bordering like purple. And so
do you like see the color, or do you kind of feel the color?
in my mind's eye, I'll see, but it's more of a feel, like a sensation of like, this feels really blue.
Okay.
This feels really yellow. Or overwhelmingly yellow with like little shots and punches of blue and red here.
Will you ever feel a color when someone's speaking to you?
I don't know that I've ever like consciously thought of that. So I would say no. Because with music, it's something that I kind of can't ignore.
Okay.
But yeah, that pattern for me definitely, I think this is involved, is like, I'll be feeling a way about something where I'm like, oh, this just happened this week. Like, I don't know, like, or currently, like, I've been feeling like I lost this friend, and this is not a real example, but a past example. So saying currently was weird, but I lost a friend who was like a really good friend for 11 years. And I was just feeling so much grief. And for me, this song was super blue, but also very like huge punches of red. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to sit down and just like get this out. And so I sat down at a keyboard and I was like, okay, before I played anything, I was like, okay, this feels like da, 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 da. And I was like, okay, what key is that in? Figure out what key that's in. And then I'm like, okay, so now I need to find something that almost unlocks the words that need to spill out of my brain, out of my subconscious, like heart and mind.
Right.
So I'll usually find like a chord change, some chord changes that just match what I'm feeling. And then I'll just freestyle over it. And a lot of times a first verse will pretty much spill out. And maybe there's like a couple words that need to be filled in later, where I'll just sing a gibberish word in place.
Right.
Or sometimes it'll be like a chorus just falls out. And then maybe it takes a little bit longer to write the verses. And so that's kind of how I generally write. But then there's also like, oh, I have a lyric idea. I really want to write a song. Like I was at work the other day and I thought, worrying isn't currency, so it'll never buy you time. And I was like, I want to write a song about that idea. And so then I'll, do kind of a brain dump and just everything, or even do an object, right? Where like, I'll be like this microphone and speak about this microphone as if it's a person, where it hears like all the cracks and the creaks in my voice and the little imperfections. And it's aware of like, it knows my deepest secrets. And it hears like the melodies of my heart, but it's also
sounds like a good short story.
Yeah, but it's inanimate, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel. And so is what I'm saying falling on deaf ears? Or into literally just this
contraption,
sum of many parts. And so, it's different every time. And especially like in co-writes, that will make things vary even more. But
right. Do you know many other people with synesthesia? Have you talked to
I don't
people?
Generally talk about it, so I haven't like.
I would talk about it all
I'm like,
the time.
yo, does anybody else experience this?
Why are you kind of private about it?
I don't know so much that I'm like intentionally private. It's just not something. It's kind of like your feelings. Okay. Like if somebody asks me how I'm feeling, I'll be really honest.
Sure. But you're not just like.
But I'm not like, hey, by the way.
Yeah, I have feelings and they're intense.
I'm feeling this way and lay it all out.
Yeah.
And then even if I do, like I don't feel like most people describe their feelings as colors.
Yeah.
Or describe a song with colors.
To relate to.
And since I think I haven't heard that, I just haven't really communicated that. Just because I've never seen that communicated either. Right. Not generally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Have you heard of other people with like...
I have a buddy that has, I think, mild synesthesia as well. And I think his manifests a little bit different. But I think he like certain colors, and maybe you experience this, but certain colors like make him really sad. Or like it's funny. I remember one day, like, there's this beautiful sunset, and he's like, that makes me kind of sad.
Oh,
And I don't know how long that feeling lingers with him, but yeah, it's so crazy how, I don't know what you want to call it, a condition or a,
I don't know. Um, for me, it's like I did describe it as related to my feelings. I think more so just because sounds have such a direct
yeah.
relation to my feeling, and I do have relation for color to sound. I feel like color's less directly associated with my feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but if I'm asked to describe a feeling, I could be like, oh, this feels like eating chewy sprees like a week after Halloween, you know?
Wow, yeah.
And that's not that that's common for
Yeah.
me to do, but, or like describing something as like, this feels like fall, or
Yeah.
this feels hot,
Right.
or this feels cold, or
Yeah.
blue or red, or,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's
So,
interesting. I wish everybody could like really dive deep when they're trying to describe their feelings,
yeah.
because it's so hard to like, because sometimes you're like, yeah, I feel sad, but
Mhm.
it's way more nuanced than that,
It's so much more.
you know. And it's like there's so many things going on in my heart and my brain, and yeah, most people don't want to be that vulnerable even
Yeah.
to dig into like what exactly is this feeling. It can be kind of dark sometimes, but that's cool that you kind of have that gift that you probably feel really, really connected with how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Sometimes to the point of like trying to ignore it
Yeah,
because it can get distracting.
be intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where I'm just like very aware of how I feel. And sometimes that also makes me feel a little bit like too self-aware, or like selfish, where I
Yeah.
feel like I'm just too aware of what's going on in my own head
Yeah.
and heart
Yeah,
and world, that I'm like, I prefer to take a step out of this.
yeah, yeah.
It's helpful for songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for journaling,
Yeah.
but I tend to avoid
He whispers.
my feelings. Yeah, I tend to avoid my feelings.
Well, you shouldn't have come on this podcast then. No, I'm just kidding.
But not in situations like this. I'm
Yeah.
just like on my own in my day to day. Like
Mhm.
I'm not like, because I'm so aware and like I'm able to describe them. I feel like I'm pretty like able to dissect what I'm feeling
Yeah, yeah.
and like really identify. So I try not to spend too much time doing that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you struggle with just kind of grappling with the blues?
Yeah. Not generally or consistently. But I remember like the first time really struggling with anxiety for so long that it led me to feeling really depressed, because I was like, what am I,
Yeah.
like, this is new to me. And I didn't think it would persist as long as it did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so intense that it left me feeling kind of low.
Yeah.
And then I didn't feel really like any depression. Like I felt sadness, but not like this consistent, like deep lowness and sadness that made me kind of not want to be here until a few months ago. And I was just feeling, it was like one of the times in my life where I was like, I'd rather not be
Around.
here.
Yeah.
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 And so, yeah, I know what that's like. And it was for a couple months. Like that one also was scary and deeper than I'd experienced it in the past.
Yeah.
So not something I consistently struggle with, but
Right.
definitely something I have dealt with and know like the reality of.
Yeah.
Do you feel, is that something you like grapple with, or?
I'm probably kind of similar, where there are periods where I feel like it's more difficult to feel joy. But it's not persistent, right? It's usually, I would say, circumstantial, but yeah, sometimes there are certain things that just kind of perpetually weigh on your heart and soul, and that makes it sometimes hard to be happy,
Yeah.
you know. But for me, and I've talked about this a lot, I have so many readily available sources of joy. And so I feel like not in an arrogant way, but I almost feel impervious to like crippling depression.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, depression will come and go, but there's so many things that make me happy and bring me joy that like if I can just go in that direction, I'll be okay. But yeah, there are times where I'm just like, I'm almost bugged with myself that I'm like not happier, you know, because I'm just like, dude, life's not that bad right now.
Yeah.
You know, I just, just things weighing on the heart. It's usually, unfortunately, just the same old stuff. It's the same, like, just loneliness and
Emotional asymmetry.
yeah, just emotional asymmetry.
To steal from you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, have you ever been in love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple times. And it was different both times. I think the first time it was 2 times. I feel like I've really been in love romantically.
Yeah.
I've, felt deep, deep love in friendships and with my family. But yeah, it's interesting because the first one obviously felt like, wow, this is the craziest thing I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I don't know. Actually, I wouldn't say that the second one felt like stronger than or bigger than
Just
the
different.
first, just different.
Yeah.
But it was but also very the same. Like I can identify, I would put those in,
Same
that was in
category.
love,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an emotion that has a very like obvious color to you?
Love is one that's really generally overwhelming. I feel like love is what makes me cry the most. Love creates a lot of ache for me, like some kind of weird like pain
when you're in it, or a lack of love.
Yeah, no, like in love too. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a little bit polarizing where I'm feeling like this deep longing, even if I'm like with somebody.
Right. Is that
And
from
then
a fear
also
of
this
losing it?
deep, deep, deep joy and like satisfaction and peace.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Generally, it's not always that way. So because of that, though, I would say no, there's not like one color that really feels like love to me, because love is so big.
Yeah.
I feel like love is infinite. And so I think love is the one thing that really like kind of transcends all and includes all. Which is cool. Also, I just had the scripture that says God is love. I'll take that very, like almost to an extreme sometimes. And every time I see the word love, I think God, or every time I see the word God, I think love.
Right.
So that's cool, actually, that idea of it being infinite and transcending, but also fully including.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love is crazy.
Love is radical. Love is so sometimes illogical. But what even is logic, actually? Because I think logic is such a worldly thing.
Yeah. It's what we've arbitrarily decided is logical.
Right? Because I feel like when God says my ways are higher than your ways, I typically think of like, okay, my logic is not your logic. And that's usually what God has to tell me when I'm like, God, this doesn't make sense. He's like, because my ways are higher than yours.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't need to make sense according to like how you understand things for it to be like my perfect will for you. So yeah, I don't know what I feel about logic or if I really like it, but.
Well, and that's why it can feel frustrating when you're like, say you were in love and then that perishes for whatever reason. It's frustrating because you're trying to tell people close to you about it, but it's not necessarily logical.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to explain your feelings, but your feelings don't really make sense.
No.
And why you're still feeling them doesn't really make sense. Like, why does it take so long to get over somebody sometimes?
Couldn't tell you. I wish I could.
Especially when you're like, they've for sure been over me for a while.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
They're married.
they're
And where am I?
yeah, they have
Still like hurting over this person.
yeah, like dude, probably the first girl that I ever really like loved, and it was so new and scary. Like I never even said it, but she like she's she got married. She has 4 kids now.
Whoa.
You know, like this was a really long time ago.
Yeah.
But and I can confidently say I'm like fully over her. But like I've ran into her parents a couple times, like at a restaurant, and it kind of affected me the rest of the day. And I'm like, dude, what's my problem? Like,
Right.
I'm fully in my head or logically, I'm no longer in love with this human. But I think the whatever love I had for her has just permeated. And I think sometimes a piece of you will always love somebody if you ever loved them, you know?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I've said this for a long time because I struggled for so many years to get over a girl from my past. And, but I came to this realization, and I kind of hold it as very true now, is like, you never stop loving somebody.
Yeah.
I don't think if you ever love somebody that you ever stop. I think that love evolves, and it can change where it's like, oh, I don't feel a romantic love for this person anymore, or I don't need to be in love with this person anymore. I love them deeply.
Yeah.
Which I think is like so amazing, because I think it's evidence of your capacity to love growing, but also my back again to the whole God is love thing, but also like the 2 great commandments as Jesus teaches, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And that the first that fulfills the second.
Yeah.
And also when he says like, on this hang all the law and the prophets. And then I think about Jesus, like what he did, like his main mission on this earth, and what he said about that to his disciples was, greater love hath no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends.
Yeah.
So we get like the greatest ever demonstration of love. He teaches that the 2 great commandments are both just about loving. He says, this is how people will know if you are my disciples. This, like this, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't provide a list. He just said, if you have love one to another.
Right.
So I'm glad, as painful as it can be, I'm glad that I have never stopped loving somebody.
Yeah.
Even when like friendships or relationships end really, maybe in like a way that feels like detrimental and like negative.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I still love them so deeply. And I think that's why it hurts.
Yeah.
Is because of that love that makes you like miss them and grieve. I think grieving is just the result of deep love.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I hate when people say like they break up and they're like, I wish I would have never met this person. I'm like, dude, that's a crazy thing to say, because I understand, like, to me that makes sense maybe if like you were mistreated and there was abuse, and you know, you're like, yeah, I'm worse off having met this person. But I think if you were really in love and it just ended for whatever reason, it's crazy to say like, I wish I'd never met this person, because for however long you had love in your life, and you can't really quantify that.
And also like, you're not the same.
Yeah, you're a fully different person.
And I believe in like God's ability to redeem anything and everything in our lives. And so even like in situations where there's a lot of negative and really challenging, hard things like abuse, or I still think like I can understand in that situation, fully understand, just like not that I actually do understand, but I can get why it's like, oh, I wish I had never met this person, because I'm like worse off. Like I've incurred like real, like physical and deep emotional damage, and like these scars that are going to affect how I move forward in the world.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like the end of a relationship can feel damaging and like comes with pain. And so maybe that's why we say that initially. Cause I've been in the position where I've said like, oh, maybe it would have been easier if we hadn't met.
Yeah.
But then like 3 years, 5 years later, I feel like hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, whoa, so much. My life would be so different. Like very specific example, a girl that I dated and loved, it ended and it was devastating, like ripped my heart into a bajillion pieces. And it took me a couple of years to like get over it.
Yeah.
But I realized only like last year that she actually introduced me to Jordan Moyes and was like, hey, I found this guy on Spotify. He only has like 2 songs out right now, but like he reminded me of you. And I just like, I think you should cover one of his songs. Like at least you'd like his stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So I follow him on Instagram and I'm like, wow, this guy's great.
Yeah.
And this was, I don't know, 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years ago. And then like maybe a year later after I'd followed him, would message a couple times on Instagram and he's like, hey man, I'm doing this show in Orem or Vineyard, like this pre-release listening party. And I've got a couple of tickets. If you want to come, like love to see you there. And I lived in Boise, Idaho at the time. So it's like 5 hours away.
Yeah.
And I was like, sick dude, I'll drive there tonight.
Yeah,
and so I drove down. I don't know what like came over me, but I would have never met him and like met Garen or Jen Blazel or so many, like Joseph Moore, like so many people in my life who are genuinely like just so divinely there and like have been such a blessing to me.
Yeah.
I can't imagine my life without those people now. Like it makes me so sad thinking about like what life would be like without those people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the amount of love that I gained is well worth like the love that I felt like I lost in her. And I'm like, I would have never known any of these people. Maybe God would have had me end up in the King Will Come in some other way. But it's like through those friendships and those relationships that are directly a result of her introducing me to him years ago.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, whoa, like that pain was so worth like these now, like Tommy, you, like probably more than 50 people, if I really count, that have had some lasting impact on my life or taught me something beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I would actually, in the moment, I would have never said I would do it again. Like I thought life was over.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted my life to be over.
Yeah.
But I'm like so deeply grateful that I learned what I learned from her and have like these amazing people, angels in my life because of that.
Yeah. And you probably have a better idea now of the kind of love that is attainable, right? For better or worse. I mean, it breaks your heart sometimes to even think about. Oof. You know, the last girl that I dated, like, I'm so grateful we had what we had because I can look back and be like, that's actually like, yeah, she ended things, but that's what I want, you know? Essentially, that's the kind of relationship I want. That's the kind of person I want. And you know, the person I end up with might be super different from her, but just to experience that level of like connection with a human, I think is really important, you know?
Yeah.
And I think some people get, you know, and sometimes it works out amazing, but I think a lot of really young people will get married quick without ever experiencing it before. And so they don't have any comparison. They're just like, I think this is great, you know?
Yeah.
But when you've had really intense love and feelings, even if it doesn't work out, you can be like, well, at least like I know it's out there, you know, it's attainable and it has the potential to destroy you. I think for it to be real love, it has the potential to really destroy you.
Yeah.
You know, which is a harrowing thought. That's why dating is so hard and scary is because the second you start to fall for someone, you realize, well, this person could ruin my life.
Quickly.
Yeah, quickly.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Whoa. Huh. That is, I think, a major reason like I've avoided dating since that is just the fear of I used to think it was because I'm like, oh, I haven't felt anything since then that like, or I haven't found anything that I feel like could turn into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just like, is it worth my time if it won't compare?
Right.
But I think like the truth is really that I think on a deeper level, there's like a fear that the same thing will happen again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think a lot of it's subconscious too. You're like, your body is like, I can't go through that again, you know? So I'm going to do everything I can to not,
yeah.
you know?
Well, do you feel like, was there ever a point with some of these last relationships that you've talked about where you're like, oh, I wish we hadn't met? Did you ever feel that way?
No, I think I maybe naively said that with some relationships when I was a lot younger. But these more recent ones, I think I was mature enough to realize like, yeah, dude, just because this person doesn't want to spend the rest of their lives with you, it doesn't feel like it's the match you think it is, like, doesn't mean you didn't have like an amazing whatever 6 months with that person, or like it doesn't negate all the good you had.
Yeah.
You know? And the tough part, I think, when it's still raw is those memories, they kind of bring you joy, but they also bring you a lot of pain to think about. Because you can look back and smile and laugh and be like, that was so great, that moment we shared. But then you're like, now I want to die thinking about it.
Yeah. Because you long for that again.
Like here's a question, dude. Do you fully delete pictures of old relationships, or do you hold on to them?
I've had people tell me to delete, but I haven't.
I don't delete them either.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, why should I delete? Why would I delete that?
Yeah.
If I were in a position where I'm like going, like, I never also went back and was like looking through them to like long after that, or like use that to like, it's been interesting too to see like Snapchat, which is like an emotional assassin when the memories, right? When it's like 2 years ago today, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
right. But then when it's 3 years ago today and it's the same picture, and you're like, oh, this doesn't affect me the same way.
Yeah.
There's a beauty there. There's also a little bit of sadness in that, where I'm like, oh, that connection is fading, which is so bizarre. Cause I'm like,
you want it to
it's
fade.
been gone forever. Like it's, but I think I realized for me personally, it's less about losing that person again, and almost like this fear of losing a part of myself, like who I've become because of my experiences with that person. Because I think the time you spend with them is an equation. Like there's some addition and multiplication happening there. And there are sums of like those experiences. And those experiences are also part of what shape your perspective and your opinions and your emotional, I guess, I don't know the right word, but just like how you feel things.
Yeah.
So I think I was once like, I used to go to this lady in Idaho named Luana, like at least once a month. And she does kind of, I hesitate to call it this, and she wouldn't like me calling it this either, because she's like super, super, she's very Christian and doesn't like the phrasing of energy work.
Okay. Yeah.
But she's just like this very like, she's literally the lady who's like in the temple all day, and then when she's not in the temple, she just has people on her table, and she like prays with them and like just kind of does meditations with them. And when I was getting through this breakup, like she just helped me a lot, like to let go of things emotionally and let things flow. And she was like, you can let go of all those things. And I had this physical reaction of pain where I was like, I don't want to, because I realized I wasn't letting go of her. Like I had already let her go. It was like, I was feeling like I had to like cut out a part of who I was, anything that I am that resulted because of our time together. Yeah. Which isn't fun.
Right.
So I think that's why it was painful, because I had healed and she just was a part of who I am, just like every single person I've ever come in contact with, even if it's for a couple moments. Yeah. You know, influences like who we are today. So I think it's actually beautiful, like the pain that comes from love and like how powerful it is, how much it can affect you, how deeply it can damage you or make you feel damaged. But I think there's also a difference between the way that we can love in our human state and like what true perfect love is.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for the ways that all the people in my life are helping me understand love more deeply, helping me understand God more deeply. There's this line from Les Mis, to love another person is to see the face of God. And I feel like the more people in my life that I can love, the closer I'll be to understanding who God is.
Yeah.
And the better I understand love, if God is love, then the better I understand God. So yeah, painful, but thankful.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Dude, I wanted to read this quote to you and get your thoughts on it. So, I'm reading this book called The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
And
love C.S. Lewis.
He's amazing. But he's talking about, so one of the loves is friendship. And so he goes into incredible depth about how friendship is a type of love. But this is kind of talking about kind of that love you feel in like a small group of friends, that dynamic where you kind of play off of each other and you have, you have three friends, but you have three unique dynamics and they're all kind of mixed. And it's actually kind of a complicated passage, but you're a smart guy. So
I don't know about that. Okay.
It says, of three friends, A, B, and C, if A should die, then B loses not only A, but A's part in C, while C loses not only A, but A's part in B. In each of my friends, there is something that only some other friend can fully bring out. By myself, I am not large enough to call the whole man into activity. I want other lights than my own to show all its facets. Now that Charles is dead, I shall never again see Ronald's reaction to a specifically Caroline joke. Far from having more of Ronald, having him to myself, now that Charles is away, I have less of Ronald. Hence, true friendship is the least jealous of loves. Two friends delight to be joined by a third, and three by a fourth, if only the newcomer is qualified to become a real friend. They can then say, as the blessed souls say in Dante, here comes one who will augment our loves. For in this love, to divide is not to take away.
Please send me that, and as soon as possible. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about that? I want to know what you think about that.
I immediately, after I read this, texted it to a couple friends and was like, I feel like this is us. Like, I feel like it's funny. You just don't, I hadn't thought about it so deeply before, but it's like, for instance, I have a friend, I have this little friend group that we're really tight where it's like me, Spencer, our buddy Connor, and his wife, Rachel, right? And it's funny because like me and Spencer text all the time, but then I have a little group chat with me, Spencer, and Connor. And then we have a group chat with me, Spencer, Connor, and his wife. And I think they have one without me or whatever, but it's not like, not including somebody. It's just, we all have our unique relationships.
Yes.
But it's cool because when it's just me, Spencer, and Connor, we have our own dynamic and it's special and it's unique and we have our own inside jokes and our own history. But like Spencer and Connor were friends before me. Yeah. So they have their own stuff. But me and Spencer live together. So we have our own stuff.
That creates its own,
you know? And then like I have my own things with Connor's wife just because of some of the like creative interests we have, And so it's such a fun group because we're all really, really tight. But I love this part. Like, if A should die, then B loses not only A, but A's part in C.
Yeah.
And where he says, in each of my friends, there's something that only some other friend can fully bring out.
I have felt that so many times.
Yeah.
it's interesting how much I've just been blown away by how much I've seen somebody change when they lose somebody, whether that's like they just grew apart or somebody passed away or there was a breakup or really whatever it is. And I've seen like how that affects their relationships with other friends or between us. Yeah. But also then like, I think The King Will Come is a cool example of that too. Cause like I said, like there are a couple people where there's just a different kind of bond with. And it's not because I love anybody else less. Like, I feel like I kind of understand and actually believe my mom now when she would say she didn't have favorites.
Like okay.
Yeah, I thought, okay, well, there's got to be times where like you just vibe with or like one of us because we're being less of a butthead than the other one, you know, at that current like phase in life. But that's not love. Like that's like getting along with or liking somebody. Like real love and deep love, like which I feel with everybody there. It's different because then, you know, like I think about like writing a song with Ashley and Jordan and Sam primarily. We wrote the song together, but really we had everybody in the group in and out of that room for like a 4-hour period, just asking people, what would you want to hear God say to you? Or like, what has been the thing that God has told you that's brought you the most comfort? And that like, without everything that they shared with us, that song would not exist. Rest in Me. And like, so it's so bizarre. Like we actually wrote like almost 2 other full songs in this like maybe hour period, and it just wasn't right. And then with the sum of everybody's input and then still like primarily those 4 people and God is like, felt like the song was mostly written there, but there's so much acknowledgement to the fact that like, we did not write that song. Like everybody wrote that song because it wouldn't be what it was without everybody. So yeah, there's just so many weird examples of that I'm like, oh, this feels so exactly that, but I oddly can't be specific with them. So,
but yeah, it's cool. It's cool to think and realize that like sometimes maybe I can be the only person that can elicit something very specific out of you. Right.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other things I couldn't get out of you or couldn't contribute to your life. But I think when you have this perspective, you realize what an impact you can make on everyone you come in contact with.
Oh my gosh.
Because your one-on-one dynamic is so like unbelievably unique, you know? So it's just cool to think about.
Yeah. Dude, I can't help but relate it to songwriting is, I was writing a song. What was Conference Sunday? Was that 2 weeks ago? So Conference Sunday, I got home from watching conference with some friends and I just like had to write a song, and I sat down and like a verse fell out. And it just like happened. And I just had this feeling, I don't know why, but I was like, Joseph needs to write on this. And so I texted him and I was like, I sent him a voice note and I sent him the lyrics and I was like, how soon are you available? Because I want to write this, like, and I just feel like you need to write. And he came over like 30 minutes later, and it was interesting how we were both throwing out ideas and we both had ideas and both were great. And we didn't go with either of those ideas. But both of the ideas that we were throwing out led us to something else that's so cool. And I'm like, this never would have happened if I didn't text you and I just thought, I'm just going to keep this for myself and just try to write this myself. I would have wrote something so dumb and like, maybe it would have been great actually,
but it would have
like,
been a different
it's
song.
not the same. It's a totally different thing. And I feel like life is this wild like tapestry or like symphony, and every single person, even if it's like the drop of a pin, like that sound contributes so much. And then the space as well, like, is powerful. And I think without the space, you almost like there has to be space. So I don't know. It's kind of wild to think that I don't know, it's like, gosh, it goes to these feelings in my heart of like wanting to include everybody, but also the times where like it just naturally doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm lost in that idea. I love it.
It's really a lot to consider. What are your thoughts on like the synchronicity of all things? Do you feel like there is synchronicity in kind of everything?
I don't know that I believe everything happens for a reason, but I think everything that happens has the potential for purpose.
Yeah.
And I think everything that happens, God can use perfectly.
Yeah.
So
do you think everything's connected?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really cool example of that. How much everything is connected. I think this idea of like, I am we, and like this idea of like unity and nothing being the same without everything else.
Yeah.
Even how much, I don't know, it's just so big. Like I'm like so easily lost in this idea because of all of the ideas that come from it of like, I'm thinking about like the blue sky. Like if the sky were green, that could literally change everything in my life.
Yeah.
Like had I been born and the sky was green instead of blue, and that would be the only thing that was different.
Yeah.
Like just because I am used to seeing a green sky, like that could have changed a sentence I had with somebody, or like,
especially since you're so connected with colors.
That's getting really weird and like kind of existential or like weirdly deep, but it's true. Like, so I do think that like life is this crazy symphony, and I don't know that I understand the definition of synchronicity enough to be like, yes, synchronicity. But yeah, I think like nothing has to stay an accident. Like everything can be beautiful and contributory to this, like, I don't know,
some grand design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Like that brings me a lot of peace.
Yeah.
I think trying to accept that nothing is connected or that it's all just like some random accident would give me a lot less like hope.
It feels more nihilistic.
Peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel nihilistic.
No, me neither.
I don't want to like be in this constant state of nihilism, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the show This Is Us?
No.
So it's one of my favorite shows. The reason I bring it up is because the writer, Daniel Fogelman, he's done other projects, but he's obsessed with how connected everything is and how so much of our past just like that we don't even realize how that connects things, you know? And so the show is constantly going back and forth and showing like, it'll have like a 10-minute, you know, start with this 10-minute scene and you're like, I've never seen these people. I don't know who these are. And then they go back to the normal stuff and they don't go back to that till like 5 episodes. And you realize, oh, this is where these two characters first meet. But the camera's on these people.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it's cool to have that realization that like everything you really do ripples into the future forever and ever, you know? And like when me and this last girl that I was so torn up about when we broke up, I remember telling her that I would never, ever be the same person again.
which is beautiful.
It's beautifully sad, but
That's great.
yeah,
Like, I'm sure the Taylor I know wouldn't be the same Taylor I know.
yeah, yeah. I would be different, and it's weird to think about because you don't know how in what ways you'd be different. You can guess some,
Hmm.
but yeah, you don't know what version of yourself would come out
Yeah.
if that hadn't happened. But I told her like I'm different, like on a molecular level, like my
Oh yeah.
DNA's
Like you're in
different.
every cell of me. Our
Yeah,
experience is like who I am is shifted like
yeah,
on the cosmic scale.
yeah. It's not that I'm not being dramatic and saying like I have a whole new personality now and I'm a different me, but yeah, I'll never go back to like a life I had before I knew this person.
Without knowing you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love that you shared that. It reminds me of a question my friend asked the other day on a road trip. They said, okay, if you had to either forget everything before, like from today that's happened before in your life, or so forget every memory you've ever made already,
Yeah.
or not be able to make any new ones, and you had to pick one, which would you pick?
What did you say?
I said I would forget everything from the past because I've only lived 28 years now. And I'm assuming that I live a long life, I would like to create new memories moving forward.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live without the opportunity to remember anything that I experienced moving forward, knowing that like I'm going to live most of my life for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And as beautiful and amazing everything in the past is, and how much that has shaped who I am. Like if holding on to that isn't worth like not getting to live moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's an impossible question, right?
I agree.
And luckily it's not a real possibility
Yeah.
that we have to deal with. But yeah, I think even though I'm a very nostalgic person and I love thinking about the past and I'm obsessed with like looking at old photos and remembering moments and journaling and all these things. But yeah, I think if you didn't have the ability to make new memories, you're like, well, what am I doing? I'm just living for this precise moment because I'm going to forget it anyway.
Yeah. Also, as many memories as I have, how much of my life do I actually remember?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So am I willing to forget that 28 years? Or really, do I remember anything before 3?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Am I willing to forget 25 years in the hopes of creating like 60 to 80 years of beautiful memories with hopefully the same people that I love? And if not, like I know that the same way that God has like just blessed my life immensely with wonderful people, that he would bring wonderful people into my life in the future, and that I would have the opportunity to find beauty and peace and experience and joy and sadness and all of the things in people moving forward.
Yeah.
So if I had to choose, I thought about it for a long time. So it's easy to answer now that I already thought about it, but I wanted to hear your answer just because of what you were sharing.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't have to. I'm glad it's not a either or, because you also like in your day to day, I don't think you realize how much you draw back on old memories.
Yeah.
For like just to kind of guide your present decisions. This like emotionally too. You're like, well, based on all these things that have happened to me, I'm gonna move forward this way so I don't get hurt. But yeah, without those memories, you're kind of just a newborn again.
Yeah.
And
I think in some ways that could also bring some freedom, where I know that like there's decisions in my past that I have felt shame for, or that have been negative, that have just naturally created some fears, and probably prevent me from stepping forward into some really beautiful things. So
it'd be a reset in certain ways.
Pros and cons, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it would be devastating to lose like even just this last King Will Come retreat alone.
Yeah.
Like even one of those days, just to lose one of those days would be life altering.
Yeah.
Because every moment is so much bigger than I think we realize.
Yeah. Have you ever had a day that is so meaningful and full of joy that you're like, this maybe sounds dramatic, but you're like, if my whole life, this was like, this was the gift that I got, was this day, my life would be worth living. You ever thought of that?
I haven't. It's got me reeling.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've
Yeah,
had that since you asked.
I've felt that several times, and I think sometimes it's not for sure, yeah, but it's wow, I wonder, like, this was so meaningful, this brought me so much joy. Maybe I'd be okay if my whole life, all the work I've done, all the experience, all the pain, if this was kind of the end of the road, it led me to this one beautiful day, would it all be worth it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple that I can think of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be hard to pick one.
Sure.
But yeah, there's some recently. And so, well, that's something I want to think about more often, just to like look back with gratitude.
Yeah.
Because I find myself reframing a lot of the negative things or things that at the moment felt very negative or hard. And I've been able to find a lot of gratitude for those things.
Yeah.
And because I've tried to make sense of them because they maybe hurt for so long that I was like, I feel like I need to make sense of these things or make it worth the pain.
Yeah.
But I haven't spent a lot of time going back and being like, what are some of just like the most wonderful, magical, blessed days of my life that I can just look back on with deep gratitude, and had that been like the peak moment of my life, it would be worth it all.
Yeah.
So I want to do that more often.
Yeah, I think it's a cool exercise. And even in the moment, like, I remember the other day I was just having one of those days with a couple really close friends. We were having these deep conversations and crying, and I'm just like, dude, this is what life's about. This is all I care about. This is all I want to do, is just connect with people on a deep level. And it felt so enriching and loving. And I thought to myself, like, what if this is like the greatest thing I've ever had in this precise moment? And hopefully I'll have things surpass it, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll get married and have children and have all these things that I really, really want. But maybe this thing was, you know, and can I be at peace with that? Right? Because I think I have all these expectations and hopes for the future, but if things go sideways or not according to my plan, can I be satisfied with these other amazing moments that I've been given, all these amazing gifts? Yeah.
I found a lot of, I don't know if you feel this way, but for me, and being 28, like I just thought when I was younger that I would have been married by now.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm actually really okay with and very like just at peace with not being like, and I've said even multiple times to my roommate and my sister, my sister's also my roommate. She lives with me, but I've just said like, right now with how much love I have in my life, and like, I don't feel like a need for like a romantic relationship. And I've never had less desire for one, even though I've been like pretty much chronically single since the last breakup. I dated one person for, you know, a short period of time since then, and I've gone on individual dates, but never like anything serious or longer lasting. But I also have like, there's days where I like really desire that, but they're pretty far and few between right now, just because I'm like, oh, this like life is so full just with the love I have from like my friends and my family that, and I know romantic love is different. But I don't know. Do you ever feel that where you're like, I'm just so thankful and so satisfied with everything in my life right now that I'm like, this could be it forever. Like genuinely, I'm like, if I'm 100 and I never get married, but I have this meaningful of friendships in my life, and like my family is close to me, and I feel this, like I'm getting closer to God. Like, even if there's a lot of hard days where I don't feel that, I don't know, just like generally overall, I just feel really grateful that I'm so happy with what my life is, even if my dreams are never realized, or I never have any like obvious success. That I'm just like so fulfilled in like friendship and relationship with the people in my life currently, that it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's super connected to that thought of like, is this seemingly perfect day I'm experiencing? Is this enough? Like, if this was my grand gift that God gave me, is that enough? Can I be at peace with that? Or do I need more to feel fulfilled and satisfied? I think you're in a really evolved state if you feel like that most of the time.
I don't know about most of the time, but frequently.
Yeah. Well, I think that's amazing. And I think it's a testament to the beautiful people in your life, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel it a lot. I think I'm older than you and have like maybe longed a little longer. And so I think I feel immense fulfillment and joy and gratitude and love for the people in my life, but there is still, I don't want to say a gaping hole, a gaping void, but it's a thing that's always on my mind, and always there's a bit of a yearning for it. But on those special days where I'm with those people and we're spending a lot of time together, that yearning is deeply mitigated, of course, you know, but, yeah, I don't know. Hats off to you.
Hats on.
Yeah.
If my hat came off, the hair would be wild. But I think what you focus on is what you see. So there definitely are rough days, and days where, like, even a couple years ago, I was like so seriously looking at adopting, because I was like, I just want to be a dad. Like, I wanted to be a dad, but I was like, I don't know if I want to, like, can I even do that alone?
Yeah.
And at the time, I felt like I was in the financial position, like, my career was going well with what it was, that I was like, oh, like, I'll be good. Like, I can be a single dad, until I meet the person who's the right person for me. But like, I don't know why I had such a, like, so many like paternal desires.
Yeah.
It was weird, but special. And I don't know, I think it made me, like, it was an exciting idea, but it made me kind of sad. Like, it pulled me pretty far from reality. And over time, I noticed, like, just these feelings of, like, uneasiness and dissatisfaction in life, where I felt like something was missing, and unless I got that, like, there was always going to be this, like, emptiness.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I think, like, you see what you look for. If I said to you right now, you know, what's something purple in this room, like, without looking, I'm sure there's something purple in this room somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, if you didn't know to look for it, you're probably not going to see it.
Yeah.
Or if you didn't make a conscious effort to look for it. And same thing, like, green's a little bit easier, but you know what I mean? Like, I find that if I look for God's hand in my life and I look for positive things, that I tend to be a happier person.
Yeah.
So oddly, I went through this weird phase where I listened to a lot of, like, old Oprah clips on YouTube. Yeah. And she talked about, like, this gratitude journaling that she does every day, where she writes down 5 things that she's grateful for. And she's done it for years and has just, like, endless journals. And so I was like, I'm going to combine that with this thing I heard from Henry B. Eyring of, like, he would write down 3 things he saw God's hand in his life that day. Yeah. And so I kind of mix, where I just do, like, 5 lines, and it's like, something I'm grateful for, or some way that I saw God's hand in my life. And they're just 5 things. And on the days that I miss, I'm not as happy.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel as content. So,
Yeah.
and it's also like way less of a commitment than like feeling like when it's 2 a.m. and I've got home from the longest day ever that I need to like write in my journal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I do a similar thing where I'll write every day. I'll try to just do as many as I can, but I'll just write down the good things that happened. Right.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll wait till the next day and I'll go back and I'll highlight with a highlighter like the 2 or 3 that were my favorite, that meant the most to me. And the cool thing is I end up going back and seeing patterns of what is actually bringing me joy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
But it's cool because there are days where you're like, did anything good happen today?
Yeah.
You know? But then I'm like, well, I'm gonna put something. So I end up looking for it, you know. Even on horrible days, I'm like
searching. Sometimes you have to search.
Yeah, yeah. And I can be like, well, today was a total disaster, but I had some time to read this book. And this book was great. And so chapter 6 was awesome, whatever. But it is crazy as I look back how the vast majority of the things I highlight are interactions I had with people.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that's not for everyone. You know, some people are a little more introverted or whatever. But for me, like probably 90% of them are, you know, so-and-so texted me and we had this awesome combo, or, you know, me and Jake got to sit down and talk for 2 hours for the first time ever. Like
today's going in my journal.
Yeah. Just these moments with humans that make you feel like more of a human, make you feel more alive.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm writing things down, I think like, oh, like, I think like events are the most fun things, you know, but it tends to be the interactions with people within these events that actually make me happy. Like going to a concert. It's like, I love music, like, but then I'm thinking back, what was so fun about that concert?
Being with the people you were with.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's an interesting exercise.
Sage always says, it's not about what she's doing, it's about who she's with.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. And it just is like, I think super true as well. There's so many days where like multiple of those lines are just somebody's name.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, and maybe I didn't even see them that day, but I have a thought, and it's one of those days maybe where there's not a lot that comes to mind right away. And so I'm searching, and then I'll have a thought of this person. I'm like, yo, the fact that they exist and that I know that they exist and that they've played any role in my life.
Yeah.
Write them down today.
That's cool.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like blessed by that. And that's another thing, you know, the whole like count your blessings. If I just like, most of them are people.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I have a buddy that anytime somebody is like, where are we eating, or like, oh, we want to go to dinner, like, where should we go? He always says it's not about the food.
That's who I'm with. I don't eat a lot of things because I have like weird dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
From like health stuff, but I love still going places with people for the company.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been like, isn't it like just so annoying and hard because like you don't eat all of these things and pretty much nowhere offers that? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, is that ever like strenuous on your relationships? Like, is that going to be hard when you're dating somebody that's like, where are you supposed to eat? Or is like that can, you know, or their favorite place and you don't enjoy it or you can't enjoy it. I'm like, no, because it's not about that. It's like being with the person. And I found that some of my friends and family, just like people who don't have those same like restrictions that I do, that some of them have expressed like gratitude for like, and also that they've realized like that I do care about them like deeper, because I'm like, guys, let's go get something, like let's go out to dinner together.
Yeah.
Or like, are you guys hungry? Like, let's go get you something to eat. Like, but I just want to talk with you and like be with you. Or even if you don't want to talk, like some of my favorite moments with people have been times where like we're sitting in silence together.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend and we were up at a cabin with a couple of friends, and everybody else stayed up way late, and we were both like more morning people at that season in our life, and we got up early and we were sitting on the couches downstairs, separate couches, but it was like that morning light coming through the windows, and we're both just like reading our scriptures separately but like in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment, like I had so much peace and joy, and I was like, it stands out in my brain like so much. And we didn't even have a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's like, it was so special to me. And so we don't even have to be having a good conversation. Just like being in the presence of people that I love is so cool.
Yeah. A lot of times when I'm back home, me and my mom will just read in the same room together.
And that's so nice.
Yeah. And you know,
comforting.
Yeah. And, you know, every once in a while I'll be like, hey, I want to share this line with you, or I'll get antsy and go get a snack, and I'll be like, what are you reading? That looks weird, you know, and we'll have a little whatever. But yeah, like sometimes it's just being, I don't know, in the same space with somebody, you can feel just comfort in that.
Where'd your love for books and writing come from? Like, is that something that you got a little bit from your mom, or?
Both my parents.
Okay.
Yeah, it evolved for sure. Like even my mom has said my mom and dad were worried about me because they were such avid readers, and my older sister was very precocious and read a ton, and I was just like so into sports. I just could not care. And then I got into like reading like sports books, you know. I would just read like really easy bad biographies about Michael Jordan or Charles Barkley or whatever. But that was kind of my foot in the door. And then I got obsessed with learning facts. And so I started reading the Guinness Book of World Records when I was like 11 or 12. I would read it cover to cover.
Reading it though, not just like looking at the crazy pictures in it.
Yeah. Well, and the earlier ones didn't have pictures.
Oh.
So I would just read the whole thing cover to cover. And so I got obsessed with learning obscure things. And it's funny, one summer I was like probably like 16, and I'm reading some book on the beach with my family on vacation. And my dad's like, when are you going to read a book that's like for adults? And just kind of razzing me. And I was like, I don't know, they just look so boring or whatever. And he's like, hear me out. And he like grabs a book and he's like, just read the first 2 chapters, and if you don't like it, I won't bug you anymore. But if you like it, you have to finish it. I was like, all right, whatever, Dad. And I was just hooked. It was just a novel, some like, I think it was Runaway Jury. It was like some John Grisham law mystery book.
Yeah.
A book I wouldn't read today. but yeah, that kind of got me into it. And then, you know, going on an LDS mission, I was obsessed with, you know, you could only read like a handful of books, but I really wanted to consume them and know as much as I could and read them in multiple languages. And then so by the time I got home, I was like, now I have the whole world and I can read anything. And it's funny, I didn't really get into writing until my mid-20s. I was just always a journaler as a kid. And so it was kind of a part of me without me knowing it. And because when you're really young, you don't really realize why you're journaling if you like to journal, you know. I was just like, I don't know, I need to write these things down. I had a compulsion, I guess. And then, as I got older, it started to become more of a creative act than just like documenting what I did at school or who I had a crush on, you know. Yeah.
When I'm one of the other books I'm reading right now is called Leadership and Self-Deception. And I'm like about halfway through, and the writing is, I don't want to bag on the author, but the writing for me is really clunky. And like, it's just like the word choices just feel so unnatural. So as I'm reading it, I'm like almost like expecting him to say something else because of the series of words that, and then it like goes some really random direction. And the grammar, like it's just weird. And I just feel like, I'm like, whoever wrote this probably doesn't read very much. But like reading your book, I'm like, I feel like, oh, this is somebody, like, it's eloquent and it's creative, and as deep as some of it is, it's also like feels really like understandable. And I'm not like I don't feel like I read so much that I am a great reader. So to have it feel like it makes sense and it is engaging, I feel like, in my perspective, is the result of like you reading so much.
Yeah.
As like almost informs how you write. Would you say that that's
for
true?
sure. I think you can't be a good writer without being a good reader. Like, and I think it's a little different if you're writing, a business book.
So the input affects the output, like what you're taking in.
For sure. Because when you read a lot, you understand what you as a reader want to consume.
So what mostly do you read now?
I read a lot of literary fiction, which is a pretentious way of saying a book that is not really like, not necessarily plot driven, more character driven,
Like,
more, yeah,
like the one I'm reading now from you.
yeah, more indie, more concerned with language than plot, like developing. Not necessarily a page turner, like some exciting action is going on, but you're digging into concepts and characters and stuff like that. So I read a lot of fiction like that. And then I read a lot of like memoirs and autobiographies, and I like reading about psychology and mental health and motivational stuff. It's hard because the self-help genre can be really just overwrought with cliches and trite writing that is not attractive to me. But if it's done right, I really enjoy it.
Have you ever read? It's a tiny yellow book called Hell Yeah or Hell No. Hell Yeah or No. It's good. I just gave a copy of it to Jen Bosel recently, and she keeps messaging me and she's like, this book is changing my life. And I'm like, I felt the same way. And some of it, like there's a couple of, it's like ideas, a book with just a series of ideas on like what you should be saying yes to in life and what maybe you should be saying no to and what should motivate that. And some of the ideas, and maybe I feel like you might feel like are more trite, but some of them are like, whoa, how have I never thought of this before? Yeah. And the example is beautiful. One of my favorite writers, who I discovered only like late last year, was Adam Miller. And he gave this talk at like the Faith Matters conference about love. And he used a story from Frog and Toad. And it was about like the garden one where Frog has a garden and Toad he's like admiring this garden, and Frog gives him some seeds, and he starts doing all these things that he thinks are going to make the seeds grow. Like he's reading to them and singing to them and, dancing for them. And he's like, no, he's like missing the point that like, kind of like love. Actually, I don't know how to say it, but basically like he just took this very simple child story and like unpacked so much meaning from it. And I was like, wow, like this makes me want to like go read all of those Frog and Toad stories that my mom read to me growing up again, or to read like The Velveteen Rabbit, or read like Guess How Much I Love You again. And maybe those are like simpler in a different way, but I find a lot of beauty in simplicity.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny. The last girl I dated, she got me for my birthday a Frog and Toad shirt.
Really?
And it says, it's just like, I can't remember which is which, but like the only caption is like, Frog was sad, Toad sat with Frog. And it's just that, you can tell one's a little forlorn sitting on a rock and the other one's just sitting with them.
Just sad with him.
Yeah. But it's like, you can unpack that a lot. Like we talked about for,
oh my gosh,
we talked about for 10 minutes, just being with somebody.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, I try not to be pretentious with what books I think are good and what aren't, because you can find lessons in any of them. But I think for me, sometimes I get annoyed because I read so much. If someone's like, dude, this book's going to change your life, I'm like, I think your bar's just lower because you don't read as much, and because you don't read as much, you're like, wow, and I'm just like, yeah, I read like 10 of those a month. Like, so I'm not as impacted, but,
well, if you've only ever heard 10 songs, it's easy for the 11th to feel life changing.
Yeah, totally.
But when you've been listening to thousands and thousands upon thousands of songs, you're like, and you listen for hours, like my Spotify Wrapped, I was like, oh my gosh, if I thought my screen time was bad, like, the amount of time I spend with music playing is just wild. But it does take more for a song to affect me. Right. And I think for a while, when I got home from mission, I thought maybe I don't love music the same way I used to, because I didn't feel like it was affecting me, but it was because I wasn't finding songs that were like, that had the same, or that had the depth or the
we have a high bar,
honesty to them to like affect me in the way that I had been affected in the past by songs that like I just had a different, lowered bar. Yeah. So it's interesting now, but I have been consistently finding music that's affecting me like considerably. And I'm like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
So I'd love to be in that position with books, because haven't been, like I said, I haven't been a big reader, but I like feeling inspired by what I read. And thankfully I've been really lucky with picking good ones. Yeah. The one that I'm reading, The Leadership and Self-Deception, it has some cool ideas, but it just takes so much to unpack the idea that I'm like, somebody else out there has written a book that I feel like communicates this idea in a way that I just would appreciate more, or connect with more. So reading it for work, but
okay, just a couple questions. We'll wrap up. I feel like people always say like, if you could go back and give yourself advice when you were 18, what would you say? But what would you say? What advice would you give Jake from like 6 months ago? Like, something you've really recently come into.
I would tell myself to just be busier with loving people and loving God. I found myself getting a little bit, thankfully, actually, like I feel like in this past couple months, I've done a lot of that. And it's been, I used to think I was a little bit more introverted than I am, because I would do a lot for the people I love, but I would end up being exhausted. Yeah. And I have found that there's a big difference between doing something for God or doing something with God. And I've had some friends send me things that have helped me figure this out. But I went and visited a friend recently, and it was like a very like ministering experience for everybody involved. But I was so tired when I left work to go see this friend, and I wasn't sure that I really wanted to that night. And God was like, you really should. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to go because you said, but I want to go, like, I won't go with me. Yeah. Like, I'll go with you. And that made it so different. And I actually ended up like feeling really charged by it and energized and like blessed by it. So I think all of these things that we have, these good desires we have, we can struggle to meet them. But I really have found in a new way, like truth in the seeking first the kingdom of God, and then the other things just kind of working out. Yeah, yeah. So that would be the advice I would give myself 6 months ago, is like, just focus more on like spending time with God and loving people. Yeah. And all these things you're worried about are going to work out.
Yeah, that's cool.
So,
yeah. Okay. Last question. I know we don't know each other super well, but we're getting there. and you've asked me some really, really good questions, but if you could ask me one question as kind of a, turning things around, and you're the podcaster.
Yeah. I would ask you, what is the piece of advice that you've received that has helped you the most? That it's been something that you've leaned on in your life?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Or is there any, I guess?
Let's see. I'm going to preface this by saying I generally don't take advice from anyone unless I really, really respect them in the field that they're giving me advice in. Right. So my dad gave me really good advice that has really stuck with me over the years, especially in moments of heartbreak and moments of like feeling like, dude, am I ever gonna freaking get married? Or like, why does this, like, it sucks so bad getting married later in life, having these thoughts. But he told me, he's like, dude, I promise you, when you are my age, you are not gonna care that you got married later in life, because you're gonna be with the person that you love more than anything, and it won't matter. Those years won't matter, because now you're with her. And I really respect my dad because I love the relationship he has with my mom. They're in their 60s and they're holding hands and laughing, and like, that's something I want as well. And so when he gives me relationship advice, I listen. When there are two people that bicker all the time and are constantly like resenting each other, and they give me dating advice or advice about relationships, I'm like, okay, dude, whatever, but yeah, that was a really helpful and beautiful thing to say to me. And he said that like 10 years ago when I was stressing about things that I would kill to be 10 years younger.
Wow. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I feel like, not that this maybe is what you took from that advice for yourself, but I think what I needed to hear from it was good things are really worth waiting for.
Yeah.
And like when you find that thing and it's there, the waiting won't matter. And actually, if anything, it will have been well worth it.
Yeah.
Where you're like, seriously, thank you, God, for letting me wait to find this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is making sure that where the advice you're taking, like looking at where the advice you're taking is coming from. Like, is it from somebody who, like, are they giving it from is it from somebody that I would want advice from in that? Right. Like your dad and the relationship that he has with your mom, and like how that's something you admire, versus like you're saying, a relationship that has a lot more contention. You're not going to want that advice.
Yeah.
But I think, like, why should I take advice from somebody who isn't experiencing or like what I want, what I'm looking for?
Yeah. Well, it's like, if I'm trying to get better at something, I want to go to an expert, right?
Yeah.
If I want to start learning how to like do music, I'm going to try to get vocal lessons from the best singer I can. If I want to learn the guitar, I'm going to look around and
find the best teacher.
Yeah. But it's like, if I want to learn about love, where should I go? I got to find the best experts I can, and if your relationship looks like trash to me, you're not an expert.
Yeah. Yeah. I really don't want advice from people who don't have good advice to give.
Yeah.
And I think that can be hard because I take a lot of advice from people who I know love me and people who I trust.
Yeah.
But not in the area of the advice that they're giving. Or like, so yeah, I just feel like maybe I want to, just because somebody loves me doesn't mean that advice is,
it might come from
should be applied.
It might come from a good place.
Yeah.
But it's like, there are people that I would take financial advice from, but I would not take love advice from.
Yeah.
And so
Or vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. If I can take financial and love advice from you, you're in a really good spot.
I guess not who I'll accept advice from, but who I ask for advice from.
Yeah.
Because I find myself sometimes just like being like, well, I don't know, so let me just ask anybody
Right.
who loves, not anybody, but somebody who loves me, who has my best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I probably it'd be better off finding somebody who like really knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. Somebody who's what, you envy or you want what they have,
Cool.
Yeah. Well, Jake, thanks so much for coming on, bro.
Dude, thank you. I'm so glad you reached out. This has been a blessing.
Yeah. It's been, somebody asked me yesterday, like what I get out of podcasting. And I texted them back and I said, everything. Like I get so much out of it, and some of it feels kind of selfish because I'm just like, give me what you got. Like I want to hear everything and I want to learn everything. And I get so much out of it. I'm almost like, well, if they don't get anything out of it, who cares? Like I get so much out of it. So yeah, thanks, man.
Dude, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, really appreciate you listening. Jake Hansen, we need music from you soon. Okay. So we'll put your Instagram and stuff in the show notes. I know you post clips of you singing, and people can go get a parcel in the meantime.
Good, thanks, man.
Okay.
I want to talk to you after I finish your book again. So,
please.
Well, and before that,
Yeah.
specifically about the book after I finish
awesome.
it. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you reading it.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.